that we can now bring in France 24's International Affairs editor, Kethevane Gorjestani. Good afternoon, Kethevane. Vladimir Putin responded to a suggestion made by the French president earlier this week of Western governments potentially sending troops to Ukraine.
Absolutely. He didn't name Emmanuel Macron directly, but it was clearly a response to that. He talked about the talks about possibly sending NATO troops to Ukraine and warned of tragic consequences if NATO members were to go ahead with that type of plan. He also warned them by saying that Russia also has weapons that could reach territories of NATO member states. So he used that suggestion by Emmanuel Macron to sort of ramp up his threats towards the West. He even threatened and warned about the possibility of having a nuclear conflict if that were to happen. So this was really, for him, a good excuse to sort of ramp up that sort of rhetoric, something that we've heard in his address last year already, but this time it was really responding to that possibility. He also responded to the recent expansion of NATO with Sweden and Finland joining. And he said that because NATO was expanding, Russia needed to beef up, if you will, its western flank. Of course, Russia and Finland have a shared border. And so he believes that his country has to respond to that NATO expansion and beef up its own security forces on that border. He also used this address, of course, to sort of welcome the position in which Russian troops are currently in Ukraine, saying that Russian troops were making gains everywhere on the front lines in Ukraine, and that the unity of the Russian population, the support of the Russian population for what he calls the special military operation, the war in Ukraine, that was one of the reasons why Russian troops were doing so well. So it was sort of a way to take pride in his army and also show the West that he was ready to respond to whatever comes, even though it has to be said that despite Emmanuel Macron's suggestions, a lot of Western allies have said that they had no intention on sending troops in Ukraine.
Exactly, and we didn't really get a clarification from the French president either to that comment. Now, yesterday, Kethevane, we had pro-Russian officials in the breakaway region of Transnistria near Moldova who have called for Moscow's help, an appeal for help from Moscow. And we thought Vladimir Putin would address that appeal today, but he didn't.
He did not mention Transnistria or Moldova at all in that speech, which was about 2 hours long. And that was a little bit of a surprise because a lot of people were expecting him to sort of at least mention it, maybe not respond directly. And that is because recently the foreign ministry had spoken to state media saying that the situation and the protection of the citizens of Transnistria was a priority for the Russian government, and that they would carefully review that request by those separatists. So that was sort of showing that Russia was taking this seriously. Why is it important? It's important because this is something that the Russians have used in Ukraine, of course, but in other regions, which is always to say there are Russian speakers, there are people in these regions, and we have a duty to protect them. And that was partly what they did with eastern Ukraine. That was one of the reasons, according to the Russians, to go into eastern Ukraine was to protect those Russian speakers in eastern Ukraine. And so the fear, at least from the West, when that call was made by the separatists in Transnistria, was that this could possibly lead to something similar to what we've seen in Ukraine. So at least for now, the Russian president has decided not to delve into this potential, but there is this question, and the situation in Moldova and in Transnistria is very tense, and everyone is really looking at that closely, including the Americans who said that they were monitoring the situation.
Kethevane, thank you very much for that, Kethevane.